Kings Island, located near Cincinnati, Ohio, is my personal favorite amusement park. Between great food, operations, and a wooded setting, there's nothing about the park I don't love. It also happens to have 15 tremendous coasters. In October, I had the chance to ride all of them. Here's how they rank for me. Remember, this is purely subjective. We all have different opinions, and that's great. Of course, only my opinion is actually correct. At 15, we have Great Pumpkin Coaster, the E&F Myler Kiddie Coaster. This is just your basic oval kiddie coaster. It's not bad or anything, it's just too small to go anywhere higher. At 14, we have Woodstock's Air Rail, your Vekoma Jr. invert. These things are called hang and bangs for a reason. Listen, I can forgive or even enjoy roughness on a large-scale coaster. On something this small scale, not so much. This is the prototype of the model, and it was shaking like crazy. It would be a fun ride if it would track smoothly, but this is the only coaster in the park I would actually consider bad. And at 13, we have Woodstock Express, the PTC Family Woody. There are several of these small woodies in the former King's Entertainment chain. They provide a fun introduction to wooden coasters for the younger audience. Is there airtime? No, but not everything needs to be an airtime machine to be effective. Overall, it's a charming attraction in the park's kiddie section. At number 12, we have Backlot Stunt Coaster, the Premier Rides family launch. Backlot's not bad by any means, but I was kind of expecting more. It just doesn't stand out in the park's deep coaster lineup. Don't get me wrong, the launch and helix are both really fun, and the working effects are awesome. It has to be said that a couple small fire effects make a big difference in the feel of a park. The other bits of theming are also solid. With that said, having ridden its clone north of the border, I've become accustomed to a random, almost violent pop of airtime on the final dip. For whatever reason, this version just doesn't have that. All in all, Backlot's fun, but there's just so much in the park that's a little better. Number 11 is Snoopy's Soapbox Racers, the park's Vekoma family boomerang. New for 2024 and a neighbor to Woodstock's Air Rail, Snoopy's is a really charming coaster. The forwards part is solid, and as always, the backwards section is slow but still trippy. It's still my second favorite family coaster at the park, and what could be one of many new-gen Vekomas in the merged Six Flags chain. On that note, 2 are set to open next year alone. The small pieces of theming add to this ride, and remind me a lot of Snoopy's Racing Railway. It's not the best coaster, and it's definitely not the most powerful, but it's great for the kids. The first coaster in the top 10 is Racer, the PTC Woody. Racer is an absolute classic, being credited with starting the roller coaster wars of the 70s. It's not my favorite old Woody, we'll get to that one later, but the sensation of speed rushing over those hills paired with the racing effect is a lot of fun. The pure hilarity of flipping the bird at friends on the chain lift is unmatched. It also looks great, with its bright white color protruding over pathways and into the forest. Maybe it doesn't hold up as well as some other rides, but it's still an immensely enjoyable experience. And at number 9 is the Bat, the Aero Suspended Coaster. This is the first coaster Paramount bought for the park. Top Gun, Flight Deck, Bat remains a good ride over 30 years later. It might not be as powerful as its clone Vortex, but Bat still holds its own. The setting through the trees is awesome, and the helix is forceful. The swinging sensation gives Bat a unique feel, where it flows very freely. The park has also taken great care of this. It rides very smoothly, even more so than some of the newer coasters. With all this said, I can't help but think that they should shorten the trains and unleash this thing at full potential. And number 8 is Invertigo, the Vekoma Inverted... Inverted? What is Inverted? You know what? I'm leaving that in. The Vekoma Inverted Boomerang. A lot of people warned me about this ride, and I have to say, they're wrong. Sure, it's a tad bumpy, and sure, those restraints suck. but if you just stick your head to one side, you're really able to enjoy the sheer power of this thing. And man, it really is a powerhouse. That loop, both forwards and backwards, makes your knees feel weak. This is a serious step up from your general boomerang, and it's a great depth coaster at KI. I'd also recommend getting your rides in while you can, because it may very well be the next coaster on the chopping block. At the 7th spot, we have Flight of Fear, the Premier Rides LIM launch coaster. For coasters built in the 90s, the Flight of Fear clones are very historic. Opening the same year as the one at King's Dominion, Flight of Fear was the first coaster to use electromagnets to launch a train. Today, the magnetic launch coasters are all over the place. It's more than just a piece of history, too. Flight of Fear has a great start to the layout, with a punchy launch. It also packs in 3 fun inversions before a mid-course brake run. And to be honest, it trims really hard. And it's to the point that it kind of ruins the rest of the ride. Still, there's much more good than bad. The indoor setting is really unique, too, and it means it's always open for Winterfest. Oh yeah, and it's the best themed coaster at the park, despite some good competition. I still don't know what on earth that pre-show video is, but I love it. Seriously, whatever the people making it were on, I want some. I hope Kings Island is able to preserve this historic coaster for many years to come. Number 6 is Adventure Express, the park's Aero Mine Train. I love this ride, and it was definitely the sleeper hit of the park for me. It starts not with a lift, but rather a tame set of turns through some quirky theming in the woods. Then eventually you do reach that first lift, and it takes you to the best part of the ride. A shockingly aggressive, fast-paced journey through the trees with some jolty laterals, which turn an otherwise average ride into an absolute riot. The recent retheme gives Adventure Express a ton of character, too. It's just pure fun. It does get hate for one particular thing, though. That second lift hill. It basically takes you right up to the final brakes, and because of this, many call it a major letdown. However, my friend and I were nearly crying from laughter from those animatronics. I was lucky to have only gotten night rides on this. I feel like it would have been really watered down under daylight. Overall, this thing is just an absolute blast. Adventure Express is easily my favorite family coaster, not just at Kings Island, but across all coasters I have ridden. Now we're breaking into the top 5, and this is the part of the video where every coaster here is pretty great. And at the 5 spot, we have Orion, the B&M Giga. It's the tallest and fastest coaster in the park, and it's definitely good. Let's address the elephant in the room first. I'm not going to comment on the height, length, or budget. I think it's wholly unfair to call a $30 million coaster cheap. And the drop is the same size as Millennium Force's. Many people may have been expecting more, like a 350-foot drop. I am not one of those people. Like many of the coasters here, the theming is also strong. There's a pre-show, plus a ton of awesome Easter eggs scattered in the queue and station. In terms of actual ride experience, again, Orion's really good. Where it thrives is in consistency. There's not a dud element. Even the wave turn is a lot of fun. The turnaround and helix both give sustained positives, while 4 solid airtime moments are mixed in. My one real complaint is that I think it should play lower to the ground than it does. The speed hill is really the only time it stays low, and I think it's a real shame considering how fast it is. I'll admit, I don't think Orion wows me like it probably should, but it's a borderline standout in Kings Island's lineup. And number 4 is the Beast, the wooden coaster the park built in-house. This is my favorite classic Woody. The Beast is an objectively stupid ride. It was designed almost entirely by Charles Dinn, the park's then director of construction. We're talking about a ride that had all its calculations done without a lick of computers, or even scientific calculators. Park engineers sifted through thousands of calculations to get it done, and the final product was the world's longest wooden coaster, a record that still stands over 40 years later. I also want to mention that this ranking is pretty much exclusively for the night ride. It's fun during the day, but it kicks to another gear during the night. It's almost hard to describe just how good it is. There's nothing like hearing the train scream through the woods in pitch black. The first half feels a lot like a really good mine train, with a lot of speeding over straight track, mixed with random dips and turns. There is some fun laterals and airtime on the first drop. The second half consists entirely of an insane helix, which pins you to the right side of the train for basically the whole time. Much like Adventure Express, this ride is nothing short of a riot the whole way through. It's a can't miss, and rightfully the park's most famous ride. My number 3 coaster in the park is Banshee, the B&M invert, also known by this scream. That, by the way, is my current text tone. It drives everyone I know nuts, and I love that. Located in the old Son of Beast plot, Banshee has become one of my favorite overall coasters, and it's also my favorite set of bumper cars in the park. It might be missing the whip of an old school B&M, like its Ohio counterpart Raptor, but it makes up for it with brute force. It crushes you in every valley, and only gets better as it goes on. It's a long ride that only reaches top speed halfway through. That's insane! After trying to rip your feet off for a solid minute, a slow, hang-time-filled roll is thrown in for good measure. The change of pace is impeccable. It's nothing short of a masterclass in coaster design. It's also the longest inverted coaster, and never skips a beat with its pacing. It might not be versatile enough to be the full package, but it still comes kind of close. Also, shout out to the logo, which is probably my favorite coaster logo out there. At number 2 in the park, we have Diamondback, the B&M Hyper. This ride is nothing short of pure fun. It has a great layout, flying both over and under the woods. Every hill before the mid-course hits, and hits hard. The final splashdown is iconic, and extremely fun to glide over. Sticking your arm out over the back leaves your sleeve soaked. As an added bonus, the rattle in the valleys gives some unintentional intensity. What makes Diamondback special is those long trains. Something about them gives this really powerful airtime. They cause this specific pull that feels like you're hitting another gear going over those hills. The only downside is that the run of hills after the mid-course brake run just don't do a whole lot. Aside from that, Diamondback is an excellent hypercoaster that is great for marathoning too. And for the number 1 coaster in the park, my pick is Mystic Timbers, the GCI Woody. Fellow shed enjoyers, this is for you. When I judge and rank coasters, one of the big things I consider is pacing, and from my experience, none do that better than Mystic Timbers. This Woody just moves at breakneck speed, soaring over its hills like crazy. This never really lets up either. It just goes on flying the whole time. The outward run of hills is outstanding. It mixes sustained airtime with sudden, powerful laterals. The drop and turnaround both offer sustained laterals too. My one complaint is that the second half isn't exactly as strong as the first. I love many of the little details about this ride too. Despite public opinion, the shed is definitely a fun piece of theming. The trains look awesome. The details in the station and entry plaza are really neat. Even the lift hill, with its variable speed and audio, has a lot of personality. Overall, it's not the best coaster by any means, but Mystic Timbers holds the spot as my number 1 coaster at Kings Island. Thanks for watching. What are your Kings Island rankings? Leave them in the comments below. I'm also willing to hear, "What are you smoking?" comments if you disagree. Thank you and have a great night.